principle that Baha'u'lláh brought, or the equality of men and women, is not functional, doesn't operate well. May operate at higher levels, maybe in companies where now they're trying to have equality between men and women at major posts, but down in the masses, men are still machos and women are just bear children and sacrifice, and their place is not recognized in the world. So I think that one of the major problems in this world is that women are not given the credit and the role that they deserve. They should really be running things more than men should, in my opinion. Anyway, so because of my mom as a woman, I believe we are the product of that decision to go to this far-off land where you speak Spanish, and we could not speak a word of Spanish. So what I'm trying to say is that that decision to leave made us learn a language and the civilization that we didn't even think about ever. And then as a result of the persecutions in Morocco, I was just talking to one of the counselors in Morocco, Kibdani, who was taught the faith by one of my father's students who became a Baha'i, told me about what happened and how the Baha'is in Morocco were imprisoned. Because of that, we had to leave the country. And we went to French Tunisia. So we were put into another civilization that was a consequence of the persecutions of the Baha'is. And so when we had to go from Arabic schools to Spanish schools, ended up in French schools, that was all part of the faith. I mean, this is what shaped us. And so I am the product, although I am of a descent Iranian and Egyptian, and my mother's father was Lebanese. So I'm the product of these three things, of Lebanese and Persian and Arabic. And then we sort of landed in Morocco because that was the wish of the guardian for people to leave their homes. And you know, that was back then. You know, this is no longer the case, but this is 50 something, 52, 53. And then we were kicked out and we had to go to a French-speaking country. So we ended up sort of being influenced by these civilizations. And then somehow I was shipped to the US. Didn't really want to go to the US. But Bahia Gulick, who was living in the US, and her husband, Robert Gulick, were family to my father. They said, no, send your son to the States. So that's how I ended up in the US. So I had to now not only learn the language, but adapt and go to school, and then eventually became a citizen of the US. So, you know, and those years passed. So we are the product. So people ask me, where are you from? It doesn't really make any sense to me because I don't know what to say because I don't feel anything. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. Once you're a Baha'i and you've been shaped, at least through this pioneering business, and how you end up being in places that you never dreamt of being in, you cannot say I'm Egyptian, I'm Persian, I'm American, because your allegiance is to this faith. And so you feel like a Baha'i, which is basically what you say, world citizen, you know, and as Baha'is, we belong to a religion, but it's not so much a religion. It is actually a cause. It's a faith. It's a commitment to build something. So Baha'is are builders of what Jesus said is the kingdom of God on earth. And as builders, we have to build. And to build, you have to teach. If you don't teach, nobody's going to become a worker and join you because he doesn't know what it is that he should be doing. So now we are into this business of building, community building, you know, and so that we're going through Ruhíyyíh institutes and all that. So I started saying that to say other things, because I'm going to be coming back and forth, and you're going to be tired of this, and you're going to be leaving this screen very soon. But right now, you're still there. So I want to connect to this business of language because when we were in Tunisia, we were visited. We got the chance in our lifetime to really meet hands of the cause, many hands of the cause, not only in Egypt when we were kids, but the visits to Morocco, to Enokolinga and John Roberts, and then in Tunisia we had the privilege of meeting hands of the cause Samandari. And you know, Cause Samandari was the only person that has seen Baha'u'lláh. So his eyes saw Baha'u'lláh. So if you get up close to him and you saw his eyes, then you saw the eyes that saw Baha'u'lláh. Now, and I mean, what does it mean? I don't know what it means, but it means something. It means something. Now, I was reading, before coming here, I really didn't want to pick up many things. I picked up 2 things to read for my own. I mean, you know, I didn't want to quote Baha'i writings because, you know, you guys know more about the faith than I do. But I picked up something on Tarazu'lláh Samandari, okay? Just a short biography taken from something on the internet. And it talked about the eyes of whoever sees the eyes of Baha'u'lláh. I just want to see if I underlined it or not, so I can read it to you. Now, let's see where I can see it because I can see nothing here. I'm sitting on a couch here. Now, remember that Mr. Tarazu'lláh didn't go to really major schools. He was so knowledgeable, but he was taught at home by Mullah Ali. I don't know who Mullah Ali was, but Mullah Ali, who was praised by Baha'u'lláh as the first teacher, first in the history of humanity, to put into practice the Baha'i principles of education. So if you don't know anything about that person, you have to look it up. Now, so what happened is that Samandari learned Persian and Arabic grammar. Now, and then he learned bookkeeping and became a great calligrapher, and then of course became. Now, about the eyes, I wanted to say this. Baha'u'lláh has declared that the bounty of gazing once upon the countenance of one's Lord is equal to the sum total of the charitable deeds of past and future generations. Now you go figure this out. Just think about it. Can I read it again?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah. Yes.
Baha'u'lláh has declared that the bounty of gazing once upon the countenance of one's Lord is equal to the sum total of the charitable deeds of past and future generations. Now, this is the gentleman, hand of the cross, that I was gazing into his eyes. And you never guess what he told me. You never guess. Take a guess. It's called participatory Zoom. So Zoom me.
He gave you advice. He gave you
No, Violeta Zein doesn't talk. She can't. She's family. She can't say. I want to hear from Firuz and from others that are there, from Sodibe and from Nassim and from Sandra, and so on, and some Pete. No, just take a guess. I mean,
Dad, I have a question. I have a question from Zoom. They want to know how old you were when this happened.
I was in high school. I was probably 16, 17, 18. I was kind of young. You know, in Tunisia, sorry to explain that. When we were young kids and growing up in these communities in North Africa, you know, one doesn't talk too much about the faith in the streets. You know, you're not open like today. They're Muslim countries. I mean, it's difficult. It's impossible. My parents, when they spoke and they taught under great caution. Great caution. So I don't know how they ever managed to teach somebody in Morocco when the Spanish police or Secret Service were watching us to see what it is that we were doing. Anyway, this is just to tell you. So we as kids, of course, we didn't do much of teaching. I don't think we did anything. So, but I was 17. So my father, he was in the living room, and my father sort of took me by the hand and says, "This is my son, Kamal." So he looked at me. Now, what did he say to me? Say it. My wife says I should say it.
Hello, pleased to meet you.
Pleased to meet you. No, he didn't say. He says, "Do you speak Arabic and Persian?" And the answer was, my Arabic was pretty broken. I could speak with my father in Arabic. I don't even know how I managed to speak to my father in Arabic because I was westernized. You know, I lived in Spanish schools, more French schools. So the Arabic was going down the drain, you know. You understand what I'm saying? You know, we were in those schools. So I said, no. He says, the language of Baha'u'lláh. So he almost slapped me. Now, of course, you're going to tell me, did I do anything about it? And the answer is no. But it's very sad. I mean, basically, we, you know, surrounded by Arabic and Persian, because my parents, as most Baha'is that use those languages, know, when they pray, they actually chant, because prayers are not meant to be read. I'm sorry to tell you all that. Yeah. So,
can I ask a question, dear?
Yes. Who's speaking, Sandra?
Yes, it's Sandra.
Go ahead, Sandra.
So I thought Baha'u'lláh was Persian. So didn't he speak Farsi? Did he speak Arabic and Farsi, or both? I mean,
Well,
or just one or the other.
I'm not a scholar of the faith. You know that Baha'u'lláh revealed both Arabic and, right? He was Persian, yes. But he revealed in Arabic and Persian. So in terms of Abdul Baha, I know he spoke Turkish and Persian. I don't know if he had occasion to speak in Arabic. Abdul Baha lived also in Egypt. So, I mean, I don't want to say, because obviously he spoke mainly Persian, but did he speak Arabic in Egypt?
Yeah, I have someone who may have an answer to that very question.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I'm right. What was the question again, Sandra? Did you say, why did Baha'u'lláh speak Arabic? Is that what you said? Or did he speak Arabic?
I was asking, Allah, darling. I was asking whether Baha'u'lláh spoke both Arabic and Persian, even though he was born in Nur and was you know, Persian.
As usual, you ask such delightful questions. It's one I've never asked myself, but I should imagine, as we all know, he was able to reveal the word in Arabic as well as Persian. So I guess that's just a mystery. But I'm sure that Dr. Kamal Zein knows, like all the Persian speakers, and perhaps including Pete or any other people who are on in this meeting who are not Persian, oh my God, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, forgive me. I forgot what I was going to say.
Okay, I just have one person in the chat did say something interesting that I've heard quoted many times before, is that the proportion of revelation for Baha'u'lláh is 60% Arabic, 40% Persian. And another person said that Abdul Baha did in fact speak not only Persian, but Arabic and Turkish, and spoke all three languages very well.
And I think, you know, the Kitab Aqdas was revealed in Arabic, is that correct?
Yes.
And that is the supreme book of this revelation. Anyway, that's not the point. The point for me is that
he said to you, did you speak Arabic? Which is why I asked you, why was Arabic so important?
Oh yes, that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, sorry. Exactly. It's because of that.
I just
because the language about
during the Qajariyah, which is equivalent to the Victorian times, as I'm sure all the Persians know and other people might know. Sorry, that's what I forgot to say. At the time, of course, there was a lot of illiteracy in Iran. But if you came from an affluent family, you spoke Arabic because you were able to read the Quran. I'm sure that the Persian friends will confirm that. So if Baha'u'lláh did speak Arabic or could read Arabic, that would be understandable, because that if you were from a very good family, you could, I think.
All right. We're not going to dwell on that. I'm just making a point that I was fortunate to be in front of the hand of the Cause Samandari, who had seen Baha'u'lláh. And, you know, he told me the truth. I mean, basically, I should have learned it better both Arabic and Persian systematically, because as you know, there are people I've met in the Holy Land, Americans, that are experts in Arabic because they studied it. Anybody can study it. I mean, if Mr. Samandari handled the course, learned it as a child, all of us here present in this room can learn both languages, but we are not doing it. Now, why are we not doing it? I don't know. I'm not, I'm just pointing at things, I'm not saying anything more than that. Is that, to me, it would seem logical that even Westerners should make efforts to learn prayers, at least 1 or 2 or 3 in Arabic, and just know what the words that God gave, because we all, as believers, we accept that whatever Baha'u'lláh said or the Bab said came from on high, right? That's it, that's what we accept. I mean, otherwise we don't believe. Otherwise we just don't believe in God or in the Prophet. So if that's the language that came down, it didn't come in French or in English or in Chinese, I'm sorry, but this God chose. So we should make efforts, and we are not making those efforts, to learn at least not just the word Allah or Khuda, but more than that, because words have power. Now, we're not going to go around these days and teach in Arabic in the streets, because you know what people, the Allah Akbar business is killing everybody. So it's like you can't use those languages. But I mean, us internally, it's of benefit to us to be able to be as well versed as we can. But it's very hard to do. But that's not the point. The point is that I felt kind of bad, and he was really upset at me anyway. But forget about being upset at me. It turns out later on, I got to meet Dr. Samandari's son when we were living in Kinshasa. Now I'm changing gears here. And Mr. Samandari's son was a counselor as a doctor. He was pioneering in Somalia, I believe, and in Cameroon. He was just a wonderful man. And I don't think I ever mentioned it to him when he was visiting us in Kinshasa, and he stayed with us in our house, that I had met his father. At the time, in Kinshasa, I used to work for the US government. I was working for USAID, and I was making films. And I managed to film him in my office. He told me his recollections. This is before internet and before all that stuff, And I have the tape of his story, but that's not the point. The point is that as I was talking about Mr. Samandari, and I wanted to connect with his son to say something about Mr. Samandari's son, Mihdí Samandari. But for preparing for this Zoom, I leaned on 2 things. One is Hand of the Cause Samandari. I invite you to read his life if you haven't done it, just so that will enrich you, make you happy. And also to read Ruhíyyíh Kanúm's article called Success in Teaching, because she says some things in teaching that we should all bear in mind, and I want to maybe come to that. I'm sure you know all that, but I want to just bring it up to you. So before I talk to Ruhíyyíh Kanúm, what she said about teaching and how good or bad we are in terms of teaching, I come back to Dr. Samandari to say something about memory and memories we have and memories we don't have. I don't have very good memory. And that's why when I was admitted to medical school in the US, I stayed a year and I left medical school. I couldn't stay because I didn't believe I had the capacity to memorize every single bone in the body and every single medication in existence. And I figured I don't want to get into the business. So after a year, although I had a full scholarship and I had a full ride, I left medical school and I almost was drafted to go to Vietnam. Luckily, they pulled the troops out of Vietnam and I never got to serve. But anyway, so that was the story of Mr. Samandari, that I want to connect with his son. So when I came to Africa and we were living in Kinshasa, we had the visit of Mr. Samandari, who came to stay with us. And in those years, this is all before internet and before emails, and at the time when we were all dealing with letters and stamps, and the relationships between us were a bit different than it is now. We were kind of attached to this is the time of the Hands of the Cause, the times of the early Baha'is, the smaller communities. We're all like friends, and we met people. And I personally just miss the kinds of relationships we had back then between people, and especially between the counselors when they came to visit, and how we stayed with them. And I just wanted to read you, because my memory is not there. That's why I told you about medical school, why I left medical school. I was going to say something about Mr. Samandari's letter that he wrote to me, which I had forgotten because I have no memory. But thank God we have letters and stamps and envelopes. So I'm going to read to you the letter because it is kind of touching, and it is because those kinds of feelings between believers, between friends, is something that I particularly miss in this day and age. We just don't feel that we are building those kinds of connections between us as Baha'is. It's not that every Baha'i should be a friend to every Baha'i, because of course, you know very well that one day communities will have 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 Baha'is, and you're not going to be friends with 20,000 people. You know, you're not going to go into their homes every day or drink coffee because you're Baha'is, or you're going to allow Baha to the banker, allow Baha to the tailor. I mean, you can't do that. It's ridiculous. But in these days, when we are few, we kind of stick together. We build relationships. We become, I don't know if you can call it friends or just soul mates. But anyway, that relationship in the early days is so important. And I personally miss those relationships. So I just want to read to you the kind of letter that a counselor, the son of the hand of the cause, would write to a simple person that he visited and he stayed with us. I just want you to hear the language of Dr. Samandari, if you don't mind. This is back in 1986. We were living in Zaire at the time. And he writes to me, Allahu Abha, and he writes it in Arabic at the same time. English and Arabic.
Closer. Closer. Oh, okay.
I don't know.
No. Further back a little bit.
Okay, it doesn't matter.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay.
Anyway, let me just tell you the story. I mean, you know, at least now, if you leave today and just know something about Dr. Samandari, Mihdí Samandari, and his father, and Ruhíyyíh Kanúm, and what I'm going to read to you about teaching, you're going to be scared when I finish reading it, but I'm sure you know that already. But let me just share this with you before we go into other things, if you have time. It says, Dearly beloved Zains. Now, nobody writes like this anymore. I hope you and your beloved Violetta and Nicola are well and happy. I'm sorry to read personal letters, but you know, you have to get what's behind the letters. Today is just a week since I left Zaire, but it seems much longer. My journey was a comfortable one and arrived at 5 p.m. in Buea. Buea is in Cameroon. Now, I'm going to tell you later that I visited him and his wife years later. The 19-day feast was held in our home, which brought extra joy to my heart, and we could exchange our good news. Though unlimited bounties of Bahá'u'lláh everywhere, Baha'is can be in the paradise of his presence, of the beloved of God. One short but sweet story I heard was that in a small town attached to Buea, called the Great Sappho, a Baha'i youth took a Baha'i pamphlet and a declaration card to a tailor who was a contact. After a while, a youth who is working for that tailor comes and sees the pamphlet and asks permission from his boss for reading the pamphlet and reads it. He was so impressed by it that immediately takes the declaration card and signs it. He gets in touch with the Baha'is as a believer. That's what happened. He took the card and he just signed for himself. May God increase the numbers of such pure souls throughout the world. May the time for promised mass conversions not to be far from us. Your most kind hospitality cannot be appreciated by any words. And this is the son of the hand of the cause. He says things like that. You have been able to make your home a Baha'i home, as Abdul Baha has described. What reward can be greater than such an achievement? Beloved Violetta and Nicolas are lovingly remembered. My warmest love and kisses are offered for them. Kindly convey my loving greetings to the all beloved friends in Kinshasa. My backache increased at the end of my journey, and I had to have rest in bed for 4 to 5 days, but I was doing my work. My humble but ardent prayers are being said for everything in your community. Please, you do the same for us. We are indeed in need of prayers. Eagerly awaiting to hear from you with deepest love and gratitude. Now, this is the counselor. This is the son of the hand of the cause, Baha'u'lláh, who lived in Cameroon. His wife wrote a letter next to this that I won't read to you, thanking my wife because she gave her flowers and cuttings and a malachite box. And I went to see them years later, and I was so touched and saddened because his wife was very ill. And of course, you know, as most pioneers that come and settle in these countries, they basically spend their lives and they die in the countries and they're buried in those countries. So that story of him, you know, there's dozens of Baha'is across the world, you know, that have wonderful stories. And some of them one doesn't read about. You can, I mean, Mr. Earl Redman has written with eloquence to all these Baha'i giants and Hands of the Cause and Knights of Baha'u'lláh and eminent Baha'is. I mean, there's so many, there's so much going on, so much that we, but the question is, how much of that are we really getting to actually read and have influence and touch us and make us kind of better people, more, you know, more elevated, more devoted, more spiritual? Because in the end, this faith, which is an extremely rich and wonderful faith, and it's the faith of God. It's not the faith of Baha'is, it's the faith of God. And it is the faith of all religions. I mean, you know, we believe in the oneness of mankind, the oneness of religions. I mean, this is the same faith, eternal in the past, eternal in the future. We are Christians, and we are Muslims, and we're Jewish. We are everything. That is who we are. Baha'u'lláh is the supreme manifestation promised. So we are all one. And we should, that's what Baha'u'lláh says, befriend the followers of all religions, because we are all one. And so it's important to bear that in mind, that this faith should try to make us more like the early disciples. We should all become instruments of promotion of the faith and builders of the kingdom of God. I mean, we have to do all we can, but we have to do it, in my opinion, with not just devotion and skill, but with a great deal of humility, like Counselor Samandari. We have to become extremely humble. And I long to see Baha'is really adopt the humbleness and the humility and those kinds of qualities of generosity, of nice, kind language, you know, because being a Baha'i is very complicated. There's like so many things one has to be supposed to do. To adopt the character of Baha'u'lláh, to be like Abdul Baha. That's what Ruhíyyíh Kanúm was telling us when we are told to be like the exemplar. That's the whole point of this faith. In this faith, and that's one of the points I was going to make, is that when you look at life, we have this world and the next world. And so, of course, some of us, like, I'm always confused, you know, like, what's the point of this world? I mean, we're all going to go to the next world. So obviously we have to do something here to deserve it. But the reality of life is not this world. I mean, it's like, it's not that we're wasting our time, but I mean, in the end, what's more important? You know, why are we so busy here? But we really are busy. And we're not just busy with the faith, because we are busy with the faith. We're busy with our own lives. We're building a life. We're building careers. We're building homes. we're doing things. If you're skilled in filming, you're filming. If you're a tailor, you're a tailor. If you're a designer, if you're, you know, we're all doing all this stuff because it's important to express life. But in the end, even although that counts, what counts more is how close do we become close to Abdul Baha in the way we actually practice, not the way we talk. Because talking is another story. Talking is a very complicated business. Talking is another world altogether. You know, I mean, you read the writings that say that unless you teach yourself, you can't influence and all that, you know, and that if you're not an example, your words will never reach anybody and so on and so forth. But it's not about words, it's about your character, how you can become like Abdul Baha. How do you do that? How do you get to that point? It's a lot of work. This is not easy. It's man or woman. I mean, it's everybody. We all have to become like Abdul Baha, but we are not. We try, but then the ones that make it are the ones we all want to be close to. Like everybody wants to see Mr. Naqshbandi. They adore Mr. Naqshbandi, you know. But the point is that there's not that many Naqshbandis. You know, there's only one Naqshbandi. I mean, there are other people in the world, of course, but we all talk about the same person, you know, which is not normal. You know, we should all be like that. And the question is, how do you become like that? It's not how much you know or what you do, it's how you are in your behavior. And I just want to make a point about, in this faith, to be very careful that we don't feel any kind of superiority towards others, because I sense that sometimes in interactions, you get the point, you get the feeling that there's some people that somehow make you feel that somehow you know, don't know as much as this other person knows. You know what I'm saying? Is that you sense that it's not that you don't belong, but, and we should be able to slowly suppress that. We should all become so humble that if everybody is humble, then you're gonna have a humble consultation, because you're gonna be humble. Nobody's gonna lift a finger because they're gonna be hang your finger a little bit just to say something, as opposed to imposing and directing and wanting it to be heard and to speak louder than the others. And so, because if you don't do that, if you don't change characters, we cannot teach this faith. We cannot have the masses become Baha'is ever. Now, Ruhíyyíh Kanúm says something that is really wonderful to read in this selection. Now, she says a point that Baha'u'lláh makes, Abdul Baha makes. Now, this is a mathematical problem. The problem is that Baha'is are they're not teaching well, because if they were teaching the way Baha'u'lláh said, and Abdul Baha said, the world would have become Baha'i by 1960. If you double the numbers of Baha'is, just do a calculation and you'll see, if you keep doubling, you start with 1, you end up with 8 billion in like 40 years. Now, Baha'u'lláh says it, Abdul Baha says it. Now, I have both quotations, but Ruhíyyíh Kanúm says it in this pamphlet. It says, Baha'u'lláh said, and if the believers had been occupied with that which we have instructed them, now all the world would be adorned with the robe of faith. Abdul Baha said exactly the same thing. I don't know if I want to bother you with it, but you know, I took it on my iPhone and I copied it, and I don't know if I'm going to find it. It says, I don't know. The teaching work should never. If every one of the friends, Abdul Baha says now, should strive in this way to guide one soul aright, the number of believers will double every year. Okay, that's the message done by Baha'u'lláh and Abdul Baha. Now, we didn't do that, which is fine. That's probably Baha'i failure, historically. But anyway, she said he wrote that between 70 and 80 years ago. This is Ruhíyyíh Kanúm says. That statement is enough, she says, to keep us Baha'is awake for the rest of our lives. For it clearly implies that the trouble with humanity, after all, is not purely its own perversity, but our failure of followers of Baha'u'lláh as well. If each one of us was really Baha'i, now this is strong statements, you know, but this is Ruhíyyíh Kanúm, is a guardian, hand to the cause of wife of the guardian. I'm sorry, I'm not saying that. I mean, I agree with everything she said, but I mean, that's what she's saying. If each one of us was really Baha'i in thought, spirit, and deed, we would exert such a leavening influence that the southern mass of the world would become spiritualized. Every time we look at the people of the world, we're inclined to feel complacent. We compare our standards with theirs, our conduct with theirs, and see ourselves 1.5 inches or 2 inches taller spiritually. But perhaps if you look carefully at what kind of human being Baha'i should be, namely a being resembling Abdul Baha, our exemplar, our complacency would evaporate, and we would realize that we Baha'is are supposed to be a race of spiritual giants, whereas we are still pygmies, just a little taller than the average spiritual dwarf inhabiting this globe. Why? First of all, most of us don't know the teachings well. She says that, I mean, the point I'm not trying to make you feel bad or make myself feel bad, is that somehow, in spite of everything we are doing now, and the Ruhíyyíh Institute and the levels and the teaching and community building, all that, I mean, deep down, you can do all the building you want. If the individual builders are not like saints of sorts, you look at them and they're like, they light up. In my opinion, and this is just me speaking, it's a problem. So the question is, how do we do that? I don't know. I read to you the letter from Mr. Mihdí Samandari, because to me, somebody that writes like that is not just any person. Nobody writes like this anymore. Nobody says nice things. I don't know if I'm making any sense or not, but the idea is that we should strive to become like Mr. Nahjavani, like Mr. Samandari, like the hands that we know, like Mr. Dunbar, like the members of the House of Justice. And we can all do that because we all have access to the writings. We all have access to God. We have no priests. We have no authority. We have no individual boss. We don't go through anybody. Each human being, whether he has degrees or no degrees, whether he's whatever, the writings are like the vitamins, the proteins that nourish the soul. And of course, I'm not saying we should all spend our lives day in and day out reading from morning till evening. You know, Baha'u'lláh likes that. But we have to somehow internalize and do what we can in our lives to be able to become. And only us can do it. I don't see anybody. You're not going to go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a friend to tell you how to. You can't, because this faith is based on pure contact with God. That's it. Baha'u'lláh has done many things. One thing he's done is he cut out intermediaries between the soul and its creator. I mean, that's a major thing. You know, I mean, we love Christianity. I love Christianity. I mean, I was raised in Catholic schools. I love Christians. I love Catholics. I love Jewish people. My best friends are Jewish people. It's fine, wonderful, great. But the rules of the game are different now. Now Baha'u'lláh is creating a new race of people. Now, today we are in Zoom because out of the blue, one invisible virus that nobody will ever see unless we have an electron microscope, somehow escaped somewhere and jumped from a monkey or from a kangaroo or for any animal and got into somebody's food or body. And all of a sudden, that lousy little virus, because God created it too, didn't come from God creates everything. Somehow, by mistake or because, got into somebody, and lo and behold, that virus has put the whole world down in its knees on the ground. It's not finished yet. Just we all read the news. I mean, I look at this to count the deaths. Yesterday we had 7,000 deaths in the world. 7,000 yesterday. Probably more than the last few days. So you think it's not going away. I wish it would go away. We all have masks and wearing this and paralyzing everything, and we don't know where to go, what to do, etc. Business economy is going down. You just destroy the economies. So, and this is just one virus this year. Now imagine you have another virus like that next year. and one the year after that. Anyway, this is viruses. So, but you know, so we can't control these viruses and what happens to the world. But you know, Baha'u'lláh has said, you guys you're supposed to be building the kingdom of God on earth, but it's not going to be easy, because if you read Ruhíyyíh Kanúm's book, you know, she says the world is like, you know, it's like there's a cliff there, and Baha'i is supposed to be there with a signpost saying, don't go right, go left, you know, that kind of stuff. And then people are not listening and all that, because Baha'u'lláh says, and belief is, you know, all the quotations. But, you know, but in the end, even though the misery and some things you can't change, and we're headed for more difficult times, I don't know what's going to happen to the world, that doesn't mean that we cannot do what God is asking us to do, because God wants us, in spite of all, He wants us to just become like Abdul Baha and be kind like him and generous like him. We can be kind and generous with our time, with our means, you know, and help other people somehow. I mean, you can't have your home open to everybody and be generous like the Persian pioneers in Morocco that I knew, that would invite people to their homes, you know, and they will feed them. You can't believe the dinners they would make. I mean, this is like, it's like a 5-star restaurant. Poor women working in the kitchen day in and day out doing Persian meals for all these believers, because they left Iran to serve in Morocco, and that's how they, you know, they welcome people to the faith. You know, so people do whatever they can do. We all have to learn from each other and try to improve the way we live and who we are, and that's what the writings say. That's what Baha'u'lláh. And when it comes to teaching, it's the same thing. You know, you read Baha'u'lláh says, famous quotation. You have to interpret it for yourself, but it's amazing quotation. It says, "O ye beloved of God, repose not yourselves on your couches." Maybe he was talking about Netflix. You should be watching Netflix. I don't know, but I mean, couches. Well, what's a couch for?
Please leave Netflix out of this.
Repose not yourselves on your couches, nay, bestir yourselves as soon as you recognize your Lord the Creator, and hear the things that has befallen him, and hasten to his assistance. And loose your tongue and proclaim unceasingly his cause. This shall be better for you than all the treasures of the past and the future. So when he says, unleash, what did I say? Do you remember the quotation? And you know, proclaim unceasingly his cause. What unceasingly mean? I mean, the Guardian translates accurately stuff. He doesn't just, you know, flower it. That means non-stop. But, you know, of course, you can't be going around walking down the street like a madman, telling everybody Baha'u'lláh, Baha'u'lláh, because, you know, you'd be locked up. You can't do that. But the point is that somehow you've got to teach. Now, are you tired of me at this point? Yes? Who's tired? Raise your hands. Okay. So let me come back to a teaching story. Excuse me. I'm just going to give examples because I have no plan. Okay. I'm just talking. I happen to, I'm not bragging, but I'm going to tell you something about teaching. Sometimes you win some, you lose some. You can't win. You know, to expect somebody to become a Baha'i, you have to teach 100 persons to have one become a Baha'i. I mean, if you think otherwise, you're basically crazy. Now, I taught when I was young. At that time, I was going to Stanford University. I was in my second year or third year. I was about to go to France at the time to finish my fourth year. I was at the time, I was biology pre-medical and doing French lit. So I was living in a dorm, in 2 different dorms. The first dorm was an international house. I was one of the first to be living in that house. It was co-ed housing and all international students. And I got in through a Baha'i who was at Stanford and who knew me and recommended me. Anyway, that's how I got in. And I taught an African-American girl by the name of Regina the faith, and she wasn't at all interested. At all. I mean, it's like you talk and that's it. And nothing, no reaction. For that first year, I must have seen it more than once, but I must have spoken once. I don't remember because my memory is so bad, I can't even go into more detail than that. But obviously, I spoke to her about the faith. The second year, I was in a different dorm, still international house, but we moved to another building. It was called Lagunita Court, was Adelpha House. At the time, we were roommates with the son of Hewlett, HP. He was, the son was there, was living with us in that room. You know, HP, and he was there. And his girlfriend, future wife, was living with us too. And then I called a girl at the time. We were trying to date somebody. We used to go through the yearbook and find a nice looking girl and call her up. And when I called her up, most girls at that time, you know, just sort of throw you out, you know, I'm busy and don't need to talk to you. Anyway, that was the end of it. So I never got to talk to her for that year. But then the next year, I was going to France, and I was going to the French majors programs, meaning we had to study French at the university. But there was also a Stanford in France program for those that don't speak French very well, but that do undergraduate studies in a house with American professors, but they're in the French culture, but they're not majors, you know, they're just, so anyway. And I think there was a major professor of religion at the time, Mr. Brown, I believe. And that same girl that I was trying to, that I was trying to date, that can dump me, I got the chance to talk to her on the bus somehow, going to that town. This was in France, in Tours. And I don't know why I mentioned the faith for the first time to her in that bus. And she was trying to become a diplomat. Yeah, she was like a nice girl, a very good looking girl. When you look at her, you say, this person would have no interest whatsoever in this faith. Okay, that's what you think. Now, so I spoke to her about the faith, and she, I guess, was a diplomat. I don't even know how I taught in those days, because I was, you know, those were crazy years where we're doing mass teaching in the streets. I was involved in projects, but I was going to do my senior year at the university, and this was a bus going to the place. So that was it. And then 6 months later, I went back to where they lived, which was a house by the river, and I was sitting somewhere else. And I was in their basement, there was a library. And she was there again. And she said, you know, you're going to say, well, how could you remember? You have no memory, which is true. I have no memory. I'm not making this up. But vaguely, I remember she said to me, we're doing a paper on religion. I talk about unity. I say, oh, wow, it's a unity. Sheesh. I'm the expert. You know, I know. If you read the Baha'i writings, I don't know if I spoke of hidden words. I mean, I must have given her a lot of big spiel about the faith, you know. She was just taking it as a student. Okay? That was the end of my, and then I left. Left the city, she left the city. I lost touch with her completely, right? And then I was in France for a long time. And then one day, months later, I received a letter through the mail, through somebody that picked up the mail for me. I was reading it in the metro. And I forget her name. I don't want to say her name. I don't really remember exactly. Probably will come up to me, will come to me. And she says, dear Kamal, Allah Apa. I say, what? Now, what happened? What happened is, she said in the letter, I don't know, it's somewhere in my, you know, we've gone through wars and evacuations. I don't even know where it is, the letter, because I kept some of these letters, like this one I read to you. It's either in France or here. She said that when you finished talking to me, now listen carefully, so you know what it is, what happens when you teach. When you finished talking, I walked up to the bookshelves. I put my hand to take a book, and I picked up Thief in the Night. Now you explain that to me. You explain to me how on earth in France, in a US campus, Thief in the Night was in the shelves. She picked up the book and read it and became a Baha'i on her own. On her own. Went back to Stanford, Palo Alto. And then at one point, she must have mentioned, she says, oh, you're Baha'i? What is it? You're alone here? There's a community here. You come. And she joined, and that was it. Then how did she find me? Because she went to Wilmette, and in talking to people, she met my brother out of the blue. And she mentioned my name, and he said, it's my brother. So through him, I got my letter. Did you follow the story? You'll get it? Now, these two girls that I thought never, ever would become Baha'is, ever, both became assistants at different years to the member of the National Assembly, Glenford Mitchell. both became claim for mutual assistance. Now, try to figure this one out. National office, now both of them. I mean, I never got to see them since then, okay? I don't talk to them, you know, I may have exchange with one of them. And one of them in the letter says, you just have to know that when that planted seeds grow. So one of the points of all this that I'm telling you that, you know, you're Baha'i experts, you don't need to hear this from me, but you never know the fruit of what one does, because you can never know. I mean, sometimes you're tested, you know, like one day I was teaching in Paris. I had this nice book of Baha'i holy places, and I was teaching this guy about the faith. He looked at the book, said, yeah. He says, give me the book. So I was going to say, it's my book. He said, I mean, if you really are a Baha'i, give me the book. If you believe, so I have to give him the book, you know. Okay, what can I do? Cannot say I'm not going to give you the book, because, you know, the impact of not giving the book, you know, it's not like give me $1,000, you know, but give me the book. So the point is that when one teaches, nobody follows up. I mean, especially those of us that are like living all over the place. I mean, I have been in so many schools and so many places, so many languages, so many people I have met and studied with and studied, like hundreds, thousands. I don't remember anybody. I don't follow up on almost anybody, maybe one person or two. You know, some have disappeared from the map. You don't even know where they are. But then who keeps track? Who counts? You cannot count, because you may teach somebody that may leave the faith eventually. So you don't know. You never know. But the point is that we can never be judged by the outcome of what we do, because we tend to be looking at each other for somehow appreciation, or, you know, be popular or something, or be recognized. But it doesn't make any sense. I mean, if you do anything, you do it for the betterment of your soul and for your creator, to make him happy, I guess. He doesn't need you. Baha'u'lláh says, if I wanted to teach, I could teach myself, you know. Everybody will become believers in 5 seconds. I guess that's what he says. That's what I read. But he didn't. He says he wants you to do something. He wants you to become to Samandari. He wants you to sort of walk miles and thousands of miles and speak. You blue in the face, because, you know. And in spite of all that, people don't always listen. Look, Baha'u'lláh himself, he was teaching the kings of the world. Who listened? A woman. Speaking of woman, Queen Victoria and her granddaughter, Queen of Romania. Speaking of women, who was a great teacher? Martha Root. You know, so that's why I come back to my subject of women, because men are no good. I mean, not no good. The prophets are good, but the rest are no good. So
there's an irony in that. You do understand that, Dr.
I can't hear you. Sorry?
I said there's an irony in you saying that, Dr. Kamal.
Yes, ma'am.
You are a man.
Yeah, forget it. Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm a man, but I'm surrounded by women here.
Je voulais te demander,
yeah.
Est-ce que ce serait un bon moment, comment il y a beaucoup parlé des femmes, que je parle de Bahá'u'lláh
You talk us tomorrow. Pour ne pas trop embrouiller les cartes. So anyway, so as you see, I've made whatever points I was trying to make. I was just trying to share, because I think if you stuck this far to listen to me, you'll be very patient. You have amazing qualities, because otherwise you would have left like 10 minutes ago or an hour ago. It means that all of us are wonderful people, are gems, you know. We're believers. And being a Baha'i is an amazing privilege. It's being rich. It's extremely rich. I mean, it is God gives you that wealth that obviously we're going to have to carry in the next world somehow. I mean, the whole point of this is that we're going to have to go. And I mean, I don't want to go, but we have to go. We're going to have to go at one point. So we have no idea what is there. And so if we don't do enough, if we don't do what we could do, it's going to be it's kind of sad, you know. I mean, the fact of us, think about those that are pioneers, you know, pioneers is fine. I mean, some of us made the decision, but, you know, not everybody can be a pioneer. Nobody needs to be a pioneer. And these days, of course, doesn't mean much, because The world doesn't need pioneers. The pioneers were people that went to places where there's no human being. When my parents went to Morocco, was not a single Baha'i in Spanish Morocco. There wasn't one. That's pioneering. As you go and you find the gem there, because you now these days when you go places, you know, there's already a lot of people, and of course you can help. And of course Baha'is, pioneers these days, mostly they're like visual aid, you know, to, especially in Africa, to prove that, well, Baha'is are not just black people, they're also some, you know, which is good for the faith and so on. But the days have changed, and the role we play. But what will never stop, though, is the fact of teaching, that this is a responsibility we have. And there is a great joy in the process. And I guess that as we participate and as we do, we become better people, and we will find more joy, more enlightenment, and it will bless us. Abdul Baha says in the writing, if you don't teach, you get no bounties, you get nothing. You have to be careful. If you want your business to thrive, your life to thrive, you've got to really do as much as you can within reason. And you speak, you know, because speaking, there's ways of speaking. You can't just go around saying Baha'i, Baha'i, Baha'i. You have to be able to communicate with the soul that is listening to you, and let the person speak his mind. And then, you know, but it gets to be more difficult. Teaching is very exhausting. The profession of teaching already is very exhausting for a teacher. That's to begin with. When a Baha'i teacher, it's not the same thing, but it's exactly the same. You have to be extremely sensitive, and you've got to be able to give the pure honey you have without putting too many words of yours, because we probably turn off a lot of people without realizing it, because we don't give the words, you know, we don't give the right words to people. You know, people, of course, are not interested. They're not all receptive, and it's just a mess, you know, especially these days. You wonder maybe if these days, because of the virus, people are more attentive to the faith. I don't know. But anyway, I don't want to say anything at this point, anything more right this second. But so if anybody has something to share or a question to ask that may give us in a special direction that will be enlightening for the rest, will be wonderful to do. So Violeta, you, huh? What is it? Please no. No. Hello, anybody? I'm all ears. From Ireland, from.
Well, I would be interested to see if anybody has stories about that, because you said something earlier about like different conflicts between people in the community, people who are supposedly better than others, or like difficulties in teaching, or like some of the stuff that you talked about. I'm sure people have lived some of that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to dwell too much on the negative things, you know. We can dwell more on the positive things, because all Baha'is are being tested at all levels all the time, wherever they are. But you know, like the stories of teaching that I mentioned, you know, about the two ladies that became Baha'is. I mean, that was out of the blue. That's totally unexpected. So, and I would never have known, except that there was some way that I was able to discover the story behind it. So which goes to say that we probably we have more results than we think we do, you know. All of you present here, I'm sure, have spiritual children. Some of them you probably know, some of them you probably don't know, because you spread the word when you were traveling, when you were talking in a restaurant or this, or you gave a book to somebody, and you cannot follow, but you're not supposed to follow either. I mean, sometimes you can, if they're your neighbors or friends or family, but if they're not, you cannot find them.
Dad, there's a question. Would you mind answering a question?
Who is that?
Who is that? There's a question.
I don't know.
Someone has a question about how Baha'is can be effective teachers of the faith if they are in a community surrounded by disunity. How do you deal with that?
Well, the problem, this problem of disunity business, you know, I mean, I'm sure you have to define what that means, but basically, if there is disunity anywhere, is that 1, 2, or 3, or 4 people are not really, you know, have not become real, true followers of Abdul Baha. They haven't really, you know, so there's a lot of ego still left behind as opposed to humbleness. So I mean, we cannot give lessons to others, you know. We can just be ourselves and try to Try to teach, because the whole point of a community of 9 people is that the 9 become 18. So obviously, if one teaches, the community will change its outlook, you know, because we think of communities like when I used to be a member of the Baha'i community in France. I mean, I was in many LSAs in my life. I was in France, in Paris, one LSA, and in Tours, and we're always like 9, 9, 9. And from year to year, it was the same 9, 9, 9. But that's not Baha'i faith, you know, that's nothing. What's the point? I mean, the idea is that 9 becomes, the whole principle of this faith that we don't follow is that you double. 9, 18. Then 18 becomes 36. But we don't do that stuff because nobody's doing much. And so obviously, the solution to this unity is teaching. Because if you try to work it out among yourselves, you better be all psychologists, psychiatrists. I mean, how you do what? You're going to spend your time teaching somebody not to speak badly, not to have these feelings towards you, to be more kind to you. They hurt my feeling. I mean, you're going to spend your life analyzing each other's feelings. So you either leave the community and you go and just pick your bag and go somewhere else. I don't know. You know, that's what sometimes you do. That you change, right? You change communities. My friend Siruz left Botswana to go to Cape Town. He didn't go because of that, but people move. I mean, I lived in so many communities. I lived in France, in the US, East, West, Midwest, Zaire, here. I mean, I've been everywhere. Now, you're going to find problems everywhere, but we have to get out of those problems by teaching enough. And it's not easy. It's not easy because we are not doubling every year. You know, wherever you are, it never goes from 9 to 18 to 36 to 72. I wish it should be. That's what Baha'u'lláh says. So the best thing about this is not to dwell on disunity whatsoever. It's to close your eyes and just don't get involved in that. But you have to be strong because sometimes things hurt. And you feel that, because the danger of all these things is that people become what they call in France, refroidi. You cool down. And you give up. Sometimes people say things, you don't want to go to feast. I mean, yes, figure, geez, I don't want to be there, but you know, that's awful. Because we are really not doing what we're supposed to do. I mean, you know, it's an awful feeling to have, but sometimes you do. I mean, I have felt it. I don't know how to resolve it, but it's because people get into things or say things or don't let you say things, or if you say things, they say this is not what you should be saying. I mean, whatever. It minimizes you. They don't talk to you like Mr. Mihdí Samandari talked to me, you know. They don't talk like that. So if people don't talk nicely, and they don't love you, they don't respect you, they're not patient with you, and because they are into an ego trip, or you know, there's all kinds of stuff. Baha'is do weird stuff. I remember a Baha'i, very famous Baha'i, you know, with his wife, came to Zaire, and they wanted to go to the provinces to teach, and they landed in a community in the boondocks there to pioneer. The resident pioneer says, "You can't come here. This is my territory." He sent them back on his own. You know, like it's my place. You can't come here, man. Because some Baha'is are crazy. They think that they are God's chosen ones, or they're like Baha'u'lláh is for them, you know, it's like their life is for Baha'u'lláh. What? Yeah, you know, but I mean, that's not how it works. You can't just think that you are, you know, you are just anybody, you know. So be cool, you know, you do, I do, we all do, it's fine, you know. The judgment is done by God. But God, you never know the judgment till you actually go wherever you're going, and that's you're going to find out. You know, this is a big surprise. But right now, we're supposed to here function on many levels, which is very difficult to do because you're supposed to be somebody who is a devout believer and a teacher, amazing. You're supposed to be a professional in whatever you do. It's your job, your calling. You can't spit on your calling. You got to earn money because otherwise you're going to be begging for money. So you have to work and take care of your family. You know, so all this at the same time, you have to deal with all that. So you do all that and you do the best you can. And then, of course, the judgment doesn't come from people. It comes from God. People can think of whatever they think of you, but that's not the point. So you just have to leave disunity aside and just sort of, just like a train, you go forward, they take care of your life, and you don't worry about it. Just close your eyes and show wisdom, because you have to show humility and wisdom. Wisdom is, yes, don't talk too much, you know, just really don't talk. The less you talk, the better it is.
Dad, I have another question. Someone asked if you could please share, because you talked about the times when the Hands of the Cause were alive and how you got to meet so many of them. Can you just share whatever you remember of the Hands of the Cause you did meet, especially things they might have said to you? Don't shake your head.
No. What the story of your mother and the greatest holy leaf? Yeah, no, I don't. We'd have to really let her go through.
Well, tell the story Mom said, because Mom is always right.
No, but my parents are not here to tell the story. But you know, my mother, just because she was a little girl and she lived in Egypt, and her father was from Lebanese, and he owned land in Lebanon and in Jaffa, and he knew the guardian, beloved guardian. So he took the family, I guess, once to Egypt, to Israel, to Palestine, and they met the greatest holy leaf. And I think so. My mother was telling us that the greatest holy leaf asked her to sit on her lap. And because my mother had a sharp tongue, you know, my parents were afraid you're going to say something, you know, something awful or something, you know, because the holy leaf was probably 70 or 80. And she touched her hands, and my parents almost, her heart sank. What was she going to say? And she says, "Oh, what lovely hands you have," something like that. You know, that's the story of my mother. When she was visiting the greatest holy leaf. So my grandfather, yeah, when he became a Baha'i, at one point he was going to kill somebody because somebody was insulting Abdul Baha, and the man had a horse and a sword and all this. He was trying to do something, so the Baha'is calmed him down and says, "In this faith, you don't do that kind of stuff. You know, don't go around with your sword and killing people because somebody attacked Abdul Baha." So anyway, so we have these connections with the Holy Land. My father also remembers seeing Abdul Baha when he was in Egypt. He came to our house, apparently, or the family house. He went up 5 flights of stairs. I don't know why they made him do that. And because he was in Egypt, he spent a lot of time in Egypt, in Port Said, Alexandria, and all that. But my father remembers seeing Abdul Baha from the distance because he was boarding a train and he was trying to see Abdul Baha. And the train, I guess, was about to leave or something. A piece of something came from the train, some dust that hurt his eye, and he just barely opened it just enough to see Abdul Baha. It's almost like it took like a snapshot of Abdul Baha was imprinted in his mind. But and Abdul Baha named, when you know, this Persian Baha'is always used to bother Abdul Baha by giving, you know, my son was born, can you give him a name? And Abdul Baha told his father, give him my name, which was Abbas. So, but my father never used the word Abbas. So anyway, those were the connections with the faith. But the hands, you know, I mean, I was pretty arrogant one day because I was on a crazy tour of Spain and France, showing my slideshow. I made a slideshow when I was back in. I made films later on, but you know, in Africa that didn't go anywhere. But I made slideshows and I was showing them. I recorded the slideshow, the sound of the slideshow, in Abdul Baha's room at the temple, which was in the foundation hall. Because there was a time when I was cleaning the roofs and I was night watchman for the house of worship. There was one night actually where I was the only night watchman in the house of worship, the only human being guarding house of worship. That's another story. But anyway, I recorded that the soundtrack of the slideshow and I gave it in France. And when I had to do the tour, I was programmed to go to Monaco. So I gave my fireside teaching in the house of the Hand of the Cause, Yuko Jakeri. Can you imagine a Baha'i, young Baha'i, 20 years old, 19, giving a talk in the house of the Hand of the Cause? But you know, that's where it was held. So I gave my talk there. So anyway, but we have met many hands over the years. Now I took notes. I don't have them with me. They are somewhere buried in some binder in Saint-Tropez somewhere, or in the house here, when Mr. Furutan spoke to us. But you know, and whenever we used to go to the Holy Land, you know, Baha'is from Africa, that Mr. Mahmoudi would say, would be received nicely by the members of the house, you know. So one time I met with Mr. Kaiser Barnes at the time, and he said, when you go back, you know, see what you can do to get Baha'i involved in Baha'i scholarship. Like you have to be able to not just teach Baha'is in Africa, but you have to find people of potential and bring them to the faith, to that they can actually become scholars. But you know, one of the things about Africa that is miserable is that Africa has no books. No books. I mean, forget about English, but let's say French-speaking Africa. Nobody invests in books, so nobody reads anything. And that's what Ruhíyyíh Kanúm was saying, is Baha'is don't read, don't know anything. I mean, they, you know, but you can teach without knowing much, because all you have to do is to give it a spark, and then they pick up and they continue. But basically, it's sad that we don't have enough literature, and people don't access and don't read, and so on and so forth. So that was Mr. Cousin Barnes about scholarship. And then one day when I was with Mr. Nahjavani in his office, he said many things. I don't know if I can recall them, but one thing I remember is, he says, when you want to serve, you don't want to serve and sort of request the position you want to occupy. You know, like I want to serve here and there. He says, you cannot be like building a building. You're a brick, and you want your brick to be right there. You know, that's my brick. He says, you should be like cement. Tell them, you know, put me anywhere. Just plaster me all over the damn wall. You know, like, I don't care. Just I want to be that wall. So let the mason take you and just put you wherever he can. And that's how you should be. So anyway, I'm sure that the stories like that, and stories that you've read, and the million books written out there, you know, it's all available for us to sort of understand. But, you know, the bottom line is that we, at the same time, we have to be happy. You know, it's really important. This faith was not meant for people to be unhappy and to be feeling disunity and feeling sad. So the question is, how do you do what you have to do, which is, you know, it's thousands of things. I mean, you know, to build your character and the kinds of things you have to do to be in compliance with the Kitabi Akdas and be a disciple like the early Christians or the early Babis. How do you do that? And yet do whatever you do for a living and the service you do, and at the same time be a happy person, you know, because the happiness has to shine in your face. You know, Abdullah says that somewhere I read, like, you know, you have a happy face and you walk down the street, people look at you, they're happy, because it's just, you know, you don't have to have a light in you around you or a halo, but you're happy. I mean, if you have a face that is like, you know, like this, it's awful. Who's gonna talk to you? I mean, what kind of influence you're gonna have? So being the kind of person that is, you know, but that's all character, that's all us. And so we all spend time building our muscles and getting vitamins, and hopefully we don't eat meat anymore, so we are vegetarians, so don't kill animals. But that's not enough, because the soul has to be nourished. That baby is more difficult than walking on a bicycle, and because that's your character, and that's the last thing you want to change. So obviously it all comes from how you're raised, but then you can also plan on being. There was a Baha'i in Morocco, I remember, that used to say, was very humble Baha'i, that became Baha'i, because we have very few Baha'is at the time. He was so humble, he used to say, I'm a donkey. I don't know why he kept saying that. When he was talking to my father, you know, like, I'm really like a nothing. I'm just an ass, a donkey. So that's another extreme humility of somebody. But basically, happiness is a major ingredient. You know, if we are happy and radiant, and we pray, and we are just teach, because I don't think one can really be loyal. I mean, I'm sorry to say that, without teaching. That's the hardest thing to do. I mean, I pity those people living in Europe, because when I was in France, I don't know who to teach. I mean, you go around, you try it. We have a place in France. It's the most depressing thing. I mean, Jesus, in the Western world, in Africa, the problem is you can teach anybody, anytime, anything you want, they will listen. I mean, you know, they're all Christianized to death, you know, so they'll argue to death, because there's about a million churches, you know. So that's another story. But, and you don't know who's receptive, because it doesn't say in your face receptive, you know, so you don't know who you're talking to. And people sometimes may trip you and say, yeah, they follow you, and then they have a foot in your faith, they foot in another community. But basically, it's easy to teach in Africa, wherever. Maybe South Africa is maybe harder. Central Africa is very easy to teach. But of course, the problem is how do you follow up and how do you. And but in Europe, it's very hard. It's very hard. It's very depressing, extremely depressing. I mean, you talk to people that basically don't, you know, like they don't believe. They're probably Catholics, but don't go to church. They listen to you, but they're more political. But so, you know, trying to communicate that the faith is not just a religion, but it's a movement that wants to build a civilization, this whole business, you know, of social. But then they have to understand that you have to obey laws. You know, it's not just, and people don't like to obey anything, you know, because they like to do whatever they want. So if you tell them you have to submit to, they're going to flip. I mean, they look at you funny, like, whoa, wait, I'm supposed to kneel down to pray. I'm supposed to do this. I mean, they can agree with principles. Say, yeah, I love the world. Yeah, one multicultural, one race, one people, fine, from government. But then coming down to say prayers every day, 95 times this and that, it takes a very special human being. To find those persons in France, I don't know, man. I really don't. I'm glad I don't live there. You know, it's like we that have been raised in Muslim countries and lived in the US, have been East, West, Midwest, and in France and so on, and in Central Africa. We figured that Baha'u'lláh made us, gave us gifts, you know. He brought us here. He opened doors for us. I mean, Jesus, you know, like even jobs I got, it seems to me that he gave me the job. I mean, it's like, it's unbelievable. The doors that open for all of us that sort of let go of this Western world, like Ruhíyyíh Kanúm said to the Persians, get the heck out of Los Angeles. I mean, Jesus, grow up, get out of there. What are you doing there? Who asked you to come here? Go to the other parts of the world, go to, especially to Africa. Nobody wants to come here. Most pioneers are leaving this continent. Now there's nobody left here. But that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to actually leave and go. And then Baha'u'lláh helps. Now, the way he helps is very bizarre because you never can prove to anybody how God helped you in your health situation or in your life. You know, it's very difficult to prove. But so when I was in Kinshasa and I had a job, and as I said, you know, God assists, and I don't know, each one can analyze how God helps you. So you cannot prove that the reason why this happened is because I prayed. I don't know that, but I have this feeling that God assists in very strange ways, and you can never convince anybody else ever that is what God did to you, that's just pure chance. I'll give you an example. When I was working for USAID, I got lucky. I got a job. I don't know how I even got that job. But that's probably God even opened the door because I wasn't supposed to be getting that job. I got a job working for aid, and I kept getting sort of. I started teaching French to embassy, and then I started teaching French to USAID people, the development agency, and then I started making films for them because they understood they could make films. I don't know how that happened, and then I got to manage training projects. Okay, so I got a good position. But then they said, oh, now we have to bid. That position becomes a stateside hire. You can't have the job. We have to advertise in the Chicago Tribune. So I was a candidate, and the job was advertised for 15 days in a newspaper in Chicago. So I said it's the end of me because I was qualified, but not that greatly qualified. I mean, there's like 1 million people in the States looking for work. So I was sitting like, you know, on edge there for a long time waiting. See what would happen. It turns out that nobody applied. And the reason why probably nobody applied is because probably they never advertised. You know, how that happened, I have no idea. All I know is that I got the job back. Now, I would say the hand of up there said, this is not going to get done like this way. Now, you know, are you saying, could God do that? Why would he do that? I mean, why would God frustrate hundreds of Americans who are dying to get that job? Why me? You know, I mean, that kind of thinking. But But you don't know. You can't go through this thinking because you never prove anything. You know, you're not gonna get a telegram from God saying, Mr. Zein, I put in a good forward. I blocked the hands of these people and didn't get published. So we get stories like that. And I give you another example, a crazy example, nothing to do with anything. During the Civil War in Kinshasa, in Brazzaville, I decided not to leave my house. I was surrounded by looting for 4 months. Looting. Every single house was looted. And they were shooting both sides, the two rivals, for 4 months. I had dogs. I had to put them inside the house because they're going to bark and they're going to get killed. So I was inside the house. And anyway, it's a long story. But in the end, when I left at night, because the Angolans were coming with MiGs and they were shooting, I had to get out at night. Took my Jeep. It's a long story. I just drove south. It was a miracle how I got to where I got. Anyway, to where we live now, close to where we live now. Anyway, so we were locked in a pioneer's house for 15 days, and then when the war stopped a little bit, I went back to my city to see what happened to the house. And the city was in total chaos. The airport was empty. There was no human being anywhere. The militia were holding street corners. You know, you couldn't go anywhere. You had to go through all this militia. And the war was won, but there were 3 different militias. So anyway, my house was being looted, and I stayed in the cathedral. I slept there. I would go to the house to pick up whatever was left for my belongings, my pictures, my books, so on. And one day, I made the stupidest mistake of my life, is to walk around town to see what happened to specific streets that had been bombarded by the helicopters. So I was walking down the street, and with somebody from Kinshasa with me, I was stopped by the couple of these militias. They call them Cobras. And they said, "Come here, white man." They gave me a broom and they made me sweep the street. So I kept sweeping the street. And then the guys had machine guns, you know. I was trying to get out. I tried to tell them that, listen, I'm just walking here. I'm just looking at things. That actually, I'm trying to see a minister because I knew somebody. He says, the ministers are us. These guys were on drugs. All of them were on drugs. They say, go. So they got me inside the house. Okay, they got me inside the house. And they gave me another broom. And they made me sweep the house. Now, the house was full of machine guns. People were inside, sleeping, all dressed in black and with faces painted black. So I kept, you know, I don't know where they were trying to shove me somewhere in the back. There were bathrooms there. And the guy that was outside with a machine gun, who had this, his name is Captain Lionel, came back in with his machine gun. He took my passport and someone had hidden in my socks. And I was up against the wall. He raised his machine gun and he shot. And like, look, 1 second, you know, he went, woo! And I thought I was gone because I was against the wall and this guy had the machine gun. I don't know how he did that. En tout cas, I'm still alive, okay? So he must have hit the wall. He didn't, he was aimed right. I don't know. Then they kept me. After that incident, I sat there for hours, waiting for me to be released. And this guy went back inside the room. He got dressed up, some perfume. Then he calls me in at one point and gives me a gift. He gave me a couple of sandals that he stole from somewhere. They are made in Italy as a gift. And he says, it's a long story, I'm making the story short. He said, okay, I was trying to get out. I couldn't get out. Then I finally said, like, can I leave? He says, can you come and visit me tomorrow? He says. I said, tomorrow, I don't know. Tomorrow, I think I have other plans, but listen, thank you for the invitation. So I walk out and take a bus, take a motorcycle for rent. Like for $3, you could rent a motorcycle because there were no transportation. I went home. That was, I didn't know where that was. That was the day of the birth of Baha'u'lláh, November 12th. So I was telling my friends that thank God that was not the day of his ascension. Because I don't think we'd have survived that one. I tell you, I went through, you know, the Civil War, those 4 months locked up in the house, man, it's like the most crazy thing you can imagine. But, you know, we got nice words from the House of Justice just because we stayed. Just because we stayed. And because the House said we were teaching. It doesn't happen often. House doesn't write like this. So anyway, so in the end, you know, you pioneering and teaching changes your life. You become somebody else. I mean, you're the product of the teaching, and this is like God makes you, He molds you, and you have to thank Him, because the kinds of things I'm doing, I probably would not have done anywhere else. I mean, you know, I wasn't supposed to be doing this. I mean, the way I was building my life, I wasn't, you know, I was planning to trying to go to medical school, right? I went to medical school and I dropped out. I did this and then finally came to Africa. Because apparently that was important for us, like those of us that are in Africa. Now, of course, it's not about Africa because, again, some make it and some don't. I mean, you know, there's no particular virtue in being here or there. But the important thing is to do something, is to serve and be happy. And just make every day better. And then appreciate others and learning from others and just have those nice feelings towards each other. You know, it's not just as you're being nice to me because you're listening to me. You have better things to do. All of you. I mean, I'm not saying you're wasting your time, but you know, the fact that you're listening, you could be watching a nice movie, like maybe Midnight in Paris, or you could be watching something like that, or you could be having a nice dinner somewhere or talking to other people. You're listening to these guys making all this nonsense. So, hi, Corinne. I see Corinne there. Let me just say hi. Can you say hi to Corinne and the kids? Hey, kids.
Yeah.
You're the only kids in this world that are listening to me. This is amazing. Those kids should get a Nobel Prize for listening to me speak. And I see Nika. I mean, I don't know most people here, but so you get a glass. I can't see anything. Is Sudabe still there? I don't know if Sudabe is there.
Yes, she is.
I am.
I don't know. I'm not hearing her voice. Sudabe, you're there?
I am, Dr. Zein. Thank you very much for a wonderful.
No, it's nice.
Talk.
It's nice. No, it's not wonderful. It's just a talk. But anyway, it's nice for you to be there. And Nassim is in the U.S. No, she's in Oregon. Nassim is where?
Yes, I am in Oregon, Mr. Zein.
Yeah, oh la la. We hear about Portland and all this was happening there. It's kind of scary.
Of course, yes.
And I don't know, Sandra, you're where?
Well, I'm in England. I'm in Berkshire.
Wow. Take it. Sorry, it's okay. My face is not important. Okay, Sandra. Now, who is let me just see, because I have to sort of learn something. Madame Hassani, your husband is the architect of that wonderful center in, was he a counselor too?
Yes.
He is a counselor, or was a counselor?
He was.
Yeah, I remember that. What he built there is one of the most beautiful shopping centers in the world. Listen, I've been to many.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've been to many, but that one is it's an outdoor, not indoor. It's like it surrounds you and it's open to. It's so landscaped in such a way and built in such a way.
It's such a happy place, and he's won awards for that. No,
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. Listen, let me say one more thing. Yeah, it's a pleasure for me to see you there, Madame Hassani. These days, one of the most wonderful things this faith is doing, it's going to have a great influence in this world, is the houses of worship. Those are going to be the architecture that is being designed in this world by the Baha'is. It's major. I mean, forget the principle, which is something amazing, this principle you know, of this institution in small towns, in national, international. But the beauty of the architecture, they're all better than the other ones. And there's so many, and there's going to be, you know, we're doing community construction as human beings. You know, hopefully we're going to get something that is as good as what happened in Iran, what happened in Zaire these days, in Shaba, in these provinces where there's like thousands of people and they're all like excited and doing all kinds of things. You know, this will have impact. But this house of worship are also extremely important, and they're doing amazing things, and we should all be proud of this architecture that is happening in the world. This amazing thing. And Mr. Siruz Mahmoudi, you are from, you're now in Cape Town, but you came from Botswana. You're a filmmaker, or you're in television, right? You're into this business. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm a cinematographer and broadcaster, television broadcaster.
You're a cinematographer and?
Television broadcaster.
Wow. See, I'm talking to all these world experts. I feel like that shouldn't be, you shouldn't have allowed me to speak because I'm saying nothing that is of any importance to you. But anyway, I got a chance to say, oh, my daughter, she's crazy. She's the one getting into Zoom and doing all these things, but she...
This is wonderful.
She always does this to me. She always puts me in positions to really speak. She did this in Los Angeles, in Pasadena. So I'm glad I got to see all these major figures that you guys are. And then, of course, Corinne, I keep hitting Corinne every other day from Violeta, her husband. I don't see him very well, but he's somewhere there in the back. Is that Kevin? Hello, Kevin.
We're just insignificant midgets, yeah.
And Peter, how are you, Peter? You've been so loyal and watching. You're also in England?
Yeah,
Peter
yes,
Baldwin?
I'm in the county above Berkshire.
Wow.
So I'm in Oxfordshire, just north of Oxford in Kidlington.
Yeah, this lately, all we've learned from England is a couple of TV shows that make us love England, because we know that the Guardian is there, so you're all blessed. But it's what's the two shows we did? The Crown, and the other one is what? This other TV series, the famous one. That happens in this chateau outside of London.
Oh, yes. What's it called?
Downton Abbey.
Yeah.
I've never watched it. I've never watched it.
Oh God. Yeah,
it's very popular with some
Dad,
Bahá'ís.
you're straying from spiritual topics. The conversation was elevated, and now it's de-elevated.
No, I'm just talking about England because
God. All things are of God.
Yes, exactly. See, thank you for saying that. Now, there's Corinne, I'll take the Corinne, and there's Nassim, and of course Sudabe. We know Sudabe well. And I don't know about Fatija. I don't know. She's South Africa, in Cape Town, probably. I don't see them. Nika, Nadaf, are you there?
Put your hand up.
Yes, I'm here. I'm from Finland. Thank you very much for this really interesting stories in this talk.
Oh, so you're very nice to say those kind of words. You're in Finland now?
Wow. Yes.
I'm telling you, this. See, guys, this is in this civilization.
Forgot Munir. You forgot Munir. Munir is in the house of worship, and Munir, it's like 1 a.m. for him.
I don't see his name, Suzy. It's not.
First of all, I'm Violeta, your daughter. I'm not wife. And it's Munir.
Munir over there on the right? Munir.
Look at him.
Are you there?
Right
there. Munir. Your name doesn't.
Munir, M-U-N-E-R.
It finally shows, Munir. You've been hiding it. I didn't see your name. I see your face, Munir from India.
Yeah.
Such an honor.
Yes.
Yeah, you represent a billion people, Munir. You represent a billion people. And Finland is amazing. You guys are gems. All of you are like wonderful people. So I'm sorry I took all this time to say all these things, but if anything I said is going to make you jump joy and do things and become do more than you've done before, that's wonderful. Then I didn't really waste your time.
It was great, and
thank you.
I love the warmth of your character, the sincerity, just the beautiful stories. I'm not a person of words like your daughter. She's amazing. She's so eloquent, and we just love you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Violeta, because Violeta does amazing things. You know, I'm not. She is doing research she spends like 15 hours a day. She's designed more compilations and more things than I can think of. And she, so I'm not gonna. She's gonna be giving a talk tomorrow on. She did that tomorrow. You're speaking about faith, no? Where are you? Disappeared.
Yes. I'm speaking about faith tomorrow.
is doing something tomorrow, and then she's doing something later on, and she's done amazing things. But I can't praise her now because she's going to start blushing now, and then I don't want to have to blush. But I'm very happy that you're all there. Munir, I'm so honored that you came from India and that this is so late for you. Corinne. Corinne's. Yeah, where's Corinne?
I just have a question that,
Yes,
sorry,
Corinne.
I should have asked it earlier, but
Please.
you mentioned earlier something which resonated with me. I mean, among other things which you said, but you mentioned the challenge of teaching in the West.
Yes.
And I wondered, like, could we explore that for a few minutes or even a thought or two? Like, how can we transcend the difficulties of trying to teach here in Europe?
Yes.
I don't know. It's quite challenging. You all those words that you said earlier about it, they just said, my mind was saying, yeah, I experienced that.
Yeah. Well, my experience in Europe, because my wife is French, and she was a pioneer in Corsica, and she is one of this rare, gems, French gems, in my opinion. And she became a Baha'i early on, and she became a Baha'i through. She was probably, I don't know, maybe 18 or something. She came to Paris, and she was in some place where there was a Baha'i that taught her the faith, and she just ignited, and she became so devoted to the faith. So she's been a great influence in my life because she's also a pioneer. She was pioneering when I saw her again in Corsica and I proposed to her. So, no, but those French Baha'is are rare in a way. Most Baha'is in France these days, I mean, not all of them, they are really many Persians and so on. And it's just hard, but the ones that have really become Baha'is that are French, they're extremely devout, but they're very few. So the question is, how do you teach them? Now, one of the couples that is a doctor and his wife that live close to where we have a place in Chartres, I remember their story that they learned of the faith when they visited the Holy Land, and on coming back, they were touched by what they saw. So having seen the World Center, that touched them. So otherwise it probably would not have resonated because the World Center has an influence and the shrine has an influence and so on. So the question is, when we lived in France, we used to do street teaching at the time, back in the 70s, we taught different parts. And, we attracted like many gypsies when we were teaching in Corsica. But basically, it's just people, you will touch somebody, but you're not going to touch many. So you basically have to cultivate friendships, but it's very, very hard because I don't know about Finland. I don't know about, maybe Spain is easier. Some places it's very hard to teach. Big people have either they have no beliefs, or if they have, they are affiliated with the faith, but they don't practice and so on. So how do you approach them? I don't know. I lived in Tours, in Paris, and now where we are in Chartres. We just, the reactions are very bizarre. I taught, I spoke to the faith to about 4 people. Some people you speak to, you give them something, they don't react to what you give them. Sometimes they don't say nice things back to you. But then I met a British woman who was living in France, and somehow at one point when she saw me, her husband passed away, she came to see me. She says, "Oh, I just read a little bit on the net about your faith, and I love your faith." That's it. And she was not French, but that she didn't say, "Come back and let's have a discussion, let's talk." They don't want to be. They're afraid that you're going to push them into something, so they sort of stay on their own. So it takes a lot of patience and energy and a lot of, But then when you hear the stories of the major Baha'is, or the Hands of the Cause, or major figures of the faith in England, or Ireland, or France that became Baha'is, you have to go back and look at their lives and see how on earth these people accepted the faith. What is it? Books they read? Is it the kinds of friendships they made? Because remember that Baha'u'lláh says there are many methods of teaching. So you got to come up with your own method. You know, Violeta was giving an example today of a method that she had developed, but this is an African method. You know, she developed that, walking the dog and talking to the guards that guard the building. And she decided, because she speaks in their language and all that, and she's going to give them individual prayers to read. Because in Africa, giving somebody a prayer book, you save their lives. They love that. Even if they're Christians, they read the prayers. But if you give a prayer to somebody in Ireland and say, read this healing prayer, the guy is going to, you know, I don't know how he'll react. I mean, I don't say, what is this? You know, so we don't have the same historical backgrounds, although they are believers, even if they have left their faith. So, but then the thing about Europe is that today Europe is not really the Europe of before. Today Europe has all kinds of people living in Europe that are not, you know, born generations before. They come from the East, the West, the South, the North. I mean, Jesus, you go to London, you go to Paris, there's Africans, there's, you know. So you have to teach the people that may not be those white folks from, because maybe those, you cannot reach them that easily, but you might reach somebody that is from this country that came to it. So it is, you're going to have to decide, you know. It used to be Ruhíyyíh Kanúm, when she was speaking, they would say, okay, public speaking attracts so many people, but then she was giving it that you should read that thing of called Success in Teaching, is that there are other ways of teaching. I'm sure that through your own behavior and through your own example and friendships and the service you render, because she says the people that are potential Baha'is are people that you're not seeing. They could be somebody who's in an old age home. They could be working at night. They could be sweepers. They, you know, we always, because when you used to teach in France way back when, it used to be that you do public talks and you invite people to come to special meetings, you know, and you advertise that people come. And the people that come are always the same people that come, you know. That's not your target audience. Your target audience is people that you would not think of. Those categories, those kinds of people that you just don't. And so you've got to go after all these people. You can, you know, you have to look at different audiences. So you have different targets, if you will, and different methods of doing it, you know. And you have to come up with your method. If Baha'u'lláh says there are different methods, that means that he's not labeled them, and you just come up with your own. It'd be your own method of teaching and your own group. And I think that maybe if we are inventive enough and if you have a pure heart, God will guide you to the person, because one of the problems of teaching is you've got to be guided to the right person. You know, people are not ready, but if somebody is ready and you don't know who is ready, but the person is ready, you have no idea who that person is, or who could it be? It could be sitting at a bus stop. So the question is, if you have at least the word Baha'i, let's say, in a bag, or a button that says Baha'i, or Baha'i unites mankind, you know, sometimes your character may not be enough. I mean, we are not like beaming of light. People say, oh, you're light, you must be somebody special. No, or a halo. So put a stupid thing in your, you know, Baha'i, or have a, you know, put something, have a bag with Baha'i, just as the people that you cross down in some of the halls that work for UNICEF or for Save the Planet, and they stop you and they give you, you know. So each one has to be inventive, you know, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to say. I know that for me, yeah, go ahead. Who is speaking?
It's me, Violeta, your daughter, the one that, the oldest daughter that you have.
Oh.
You only have 2 children.
Yeah, he's the only one, yeah.
I'm the other one. Okay,
yeah.
Corinne is in Ireland and she's asking about teaching. And I seem to remember that Mr. Taherzadeh lived in Ireland for decades. Now he lived in Ireland before Corinne was there, but I'm wondering if maybe Kevin knew him and maybe he had success in teaching in Ireland. Like maybe are there Baha'is who became Baha'is at the time of Mr. Taherzadeh, and maybe he had a good technique for reaching Westerners? I'm curious about that.
That's okay.
I don't really have much to say about Mr. Taherzadeh's experiences, you know, because I left Ireland in 1990.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, now that we talked to Corinne now is processing that. She's going to have to find, you're going to have to find ways, you know, your own personal creative ways of doing it. And I think this is wonderful. You can't copy anybody, you know, it's your heart.
I like that. I like that, you know, the find your own method. And the Bahá'u'lláh says, Bahá'u'lláh says there's many methods of teaching.
I'm telling you, you can't. And if one is uncomfortable with, like, for instance, I'm uncomfortable these days with street teaching. Like sometimes in the communities, we have to go to neighborhoods, you know, like I just don't go because I'm looked upon as somebody who is weird, you know, so I don't go. But again, I'm not supposed to if I don't want to. So you have to find something, because you shouldn't do something that you really don't feel comfortable with, you know. And, you know, I'm not saying you have to be on the radio, because we get invited somewhere to speak on the principle of how to keep unity in the household. These days, people are beating their wives. So go speak about your life, how your husband treats you so nicely, and the faith, it says that. And you're going to have maybe 10,000 people in Ireland listening to you and picking up quotations about the faith that speaks about the equality of men and women. He's going to speak about the character and how do you raise children. You know, look at your children. See, most children would not be sitting there watching like this. You know, most children wouldn't. But yours are. So there's something you've done amazing for them. So then you're the kind of person that could be in some sort of forum, and there's so many radios, there may be radios on the internet. So maybe that way you can reach maybe 10,000 people. Whereas if you walk to the bus stop, you may just find one person or two persons. So you have to do anything like that. But it seems to me that we have to be happy doing it, you know, and not be discouraged. Just keep doing it. I'm sure you're going to find a way. They're going to tell us one day through Violeta that, wow, I found this way, and I was able to find somebody that loved the faith. And, you know, and again, to reach somebody, you need to talk to a lot of people, because the people, like I said in my examples, the ones you think are never going to accept, they tend to be the ones that accept. And the ones you think really they're close are the ones that are really far, because you cannot judge. How do we know the heart of somebody? You don't know anything. But you've got to let people talk, you know. One of the things about teaching, in my opinion, is that you've got to let the person really unload. Let them talk, let them talk, let them talk, let them talk, you know. And then say, listen, wow, what you're saying is great, because we believe in all that. But, you know, we also believe, you know, we are now in this pandemic stuff, you know, and we need to find ways of getting a new consciousness, you know. So I think that we have something, this faith is very new, and it says this, you know. And so if the reaction is great, then you sort of give them something to read, something light with pictures and all that. Okay, anybody else that has, Munir, you have something to say?
No.
You're in India. Munir has to teach 1 billion people. Go ahead, Munir.
Now, no zero teaching today.
Zero. Well, I don't know. Yeah, zero.
Only gaining. Yeah, only gaining from Zoom different meetings, so that we entry by troops, like when we open the doors of the temple, so that I attack.
Yeah, this entry by troop. You know, it's going to be tough, because one of these days, when things really happen, we're going to be probably invaded by people coming, knocking at your door, asking questions, and why didn't you tell us, and all that business, you know. And you're going to have to find ways of saying things, speaking to people. I mean, right now, nobody's coming to you because you're going to them, but you don't know what's going to happen. And we don't know. I guess if you read carefully the letter of the 9th of May, there's all kinds of things inside there that explain how our responsibility for helping people and helping society. So we're going to have to think carefully as to what it is we can do, you know, as individuals, as a community, as institutions, because we don't know what this is. See, the Zoom we're doing now is because of the pandemic. I guess if there wasn't a pandemic, we'd probably be doing this. So this is creating another level of consciousness, of uniting people. I mean, you're talking about people from like maybe 6 countries here. I mean, you know, gee whiz, this is the technology that never happened in the time of Jesus. So why is it happening now? Why is it happening now? Why? We're sending people to Mars. We're sending electric cars. We look at telephones. Telephones are computers. I mean, you know, can you imagine this? What you're doing here? I mean, this wouldn't make any sense for anybody back then. This is, to us, is very, very simple. There were maybe 10, 20, 30, 100 people talking, perfectly talking in one language across the US, Finland, South Africa, England, Africa, Congo. I mean, it's amazing. So, yeah. Again, and you know, the power of women. Look how many women are here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the majority. See, the world is leaning towards that. Well, I don't, you know, if you have any questions, shoot. And I could be talking here till tomorrow morning, but I mean, By the way, we have a school, and we are moving in 2 days out of this house into a new house, and our school, we have 2 schools, but the school we are renting here has buildings that we have to destroy because we have to get out of here. And we built on somebody's property, and the next property is where we have the primary and the kindergarten, and this is a junior high and the high school, and this is the one we cannot keep because it's extremely expensive. So because we built, the owner says you need to unbuild. So we are doing the reverse of what architects do. We have to remove, and there's nothing worse than breaking down and trying to find people to take your rubble. So anyway, that's why we are kind of stressed here, because we got to do that. We have 2 more months left. And if you see the invitation we later sent out, that photo, that's the building. Those are the classrooms that I built as an architect, if you will. They're just simple things, you know, to house classrooms. I painted them in colors, and it was fine when people were, we had many kids, but these days with the economy, because here we're going to be hit. We were hit by the economy. We're being hit now by the virus, and maybe there'll be another hit by a political unrest. I mean, we're being slapped by 3 things, 3 waves. So we don't know where this is going. But again, you know, the way the world is going, it's going to go forward on some levels, like electric cars and ecology, and it's going to go down through pandemics and civil unrest and economic collapse. So you know, it's both ways. You're building and you're unbuilding, you know, and you know, that's probably the plan of God. I mean, the apocalypse wasn't written as a decor, you know. If it was written, it's because it is, and the Baha'i writings also are very clear what will happen. But in the middle of all that, you can't just stay and, as the House of Justice says, and look at it as a standby, as a parenthesis. You know, you got to do something, because this is the time for action. You have to do something. Hopefully, people's ears will open up. We don't have any statistics or any people witnessing that this pandemic is making people more aware of spiritual realities, but the world is talking about coming together as a world to fight the virus. So they believe in universal, you know, system for finding solutions.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just find it alone, you know. But that is very theoretical, you know. To go from there to the spiritual reality that we are one and we all should be one common faith business. That leap, that's something that you all have to find ways of talking about. You have to tell them, that's how we teach. We have one common faith, just one God, one people, one faith. And hopefully people will say, wow, I believe in one faith. And then it's freedom. As Ruhíyyíh Kanúm says, people are now defending the wrong kind of freedoms, you know, the freedom to do whatever you want, you know. There's other freedoms that we have to discuss, and we have to speak the language that people will be attracted to, but you also need the words of God. People have to read what Baha'u'lláh said. That's where the influence is. We can't use our words too much, because those words may not be effective. Maybe those block people understanding of the faith. So you have to choose well the words. You can't choose just any of his writings. You can't get the heavy stuff that they would be afraid to get into the faith. I mean, there's some stuff in the writings that are just too strong for people to understand. They're going to think, what kind of faith is this? So we've got to choose those passages, those writings, like the hidden words, those things, you know. Anybody else wishes to say anything? Jeez, I must have really taken up your time a lot. What time is it? 10 hours, almost 2 hours.
Yeah, I think.
Thank you so much. It was so wonderful to meet you.
Thank you for seeing you. Yes, it's a pleasure seeing you all.
Okay, if anybody else wants to say any last words, my friend Pete is going to say the closing prayer. So before he does, if anybody wants to say something. Thank you, Dad. That was really nice. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. I hope I didn't bore you too much. So
a little bit, but that's okay.
All right, good. Okay, I was afraid so.
No, he didn't. You were
was
wonderful. Thank you.
So, Debbie, thank you so much for being there. Yeah.
Thank you for such an inspiring presentation. So uplifting.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's so nice for you to be honored to have your presence there.
No.
And I know you're a major person in Cape Town and South Africa. So
no.
We
You are
expect
just the dust on the footstep of the beloved. Nothing to mention.
Cyrus, have you heard of Dr. Taj Hagi and the Open Mosque in Cape Town?
Doctor?
Taj Hagi and the Open Mosque in Cape Town. He lives in Oxford.
No, I haven't.
It's very exciting. Reformist, progressive. You should investigate it. It's in Cape Town.
I'll take a note. Yeah, Open Mosque. Doctor,
Good.
yeah, you can.
Dr. Taj Hagi. He was from South Africa. He's his family was from Pakistan or somewhere.
Right.
Wow. Good. Wonderful. Okay.
Thank you for sharing.
I'm happy to look into that. Well, Sandra, you still there? Nice to see you. Thank you for being there.
Thank you very
and,
much.
Corinne and the kids. You kids are very patient. Hi, kids. Thank you. I know we hear so much about you. You have to come and visit, but when there are no flights, so we do come back eventually. And Nikki, no.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Take care. Wonderful. Nice seeing you all. Thank you for being there. See you next time soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was so much fun. Thank you so much. This was the best Zoom I've had. It was fun and it was intimate. I really liked it.
Munir, thank you for being there. And say hello to the temple and to India.
And Pete, we're going to listen to your prayer now. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. You're so wonderful.
Somebody wants to show the temple.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Verily these servants are turning to thee, supplicating thy kingdom of mercy. Verily they are attracted by thy holiness and are set aglow with the fire of thy love, seeking confirmation from thy wondrous kingdom and hoping for attainment in thy heavenly realm. Verily they long for the descent of thy bestowal, desiring illumination from the Sun of reality. O Lord, make them radiant lamps, merciful signs, fruitful trees, and shining stars. May they come forth in thy service and be connected with thee by the bonds and ties of thy love, longing for the lights of thy favor. O Lord, make them signs of guidance, standards of thine immortal kingdom, waves of the sea of thy mercy, mirrors of the light of thy majesty. Verily, thou art the generous. Verily, thou art the merciful. Verily, thou art the precious, the beloved.
Okay, goodbye, everybody. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have one thing to say.
Yes.
Kamal, you have an amazing memory. You
Yeah.
have remembered all these stories from so long ago. So please don't say you don't have a good memory.
It's not that good. It's very, very selective memory.
It's fine. She's right.
No, very few things. No, very few.
Good night, dearest ones. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So lovely.
Guys.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Allah, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Zein. Thank you. Tomorrow night. Bye.
I'll see you tomorrow night. Yes.
Bye.
Okay, tomorrow night. Tomorrow night for Violetta. Munir tomorrow night.
Munir is not going to sleep this week.
No, Munir is very awake.
Yeah.
Monique doesn't
For me,
sleep.
thought.
Good night, Nassim.
Good night, everybody. Corinne, kids.
Good night.
Good night. Sleep
Take care.
well.
Happy. Nice to see you. Thank you for everything.
We can't, all the bright faces, we can't say goodbye straight away.
I know.
Yes.
I was so impressed the children stayed up. It's late.
We have muscles.
Yes.
Yeah.
Elevated conversations, the three of us. We have a new Skype group called the Three Amigos, and we have elevated conversations, the three of us. We're finding ways to talk about important things.
Oh.
Yes, and we share.
Only for the cool.
Yeah.
Only for the cool.
It's a Skype group that only has space for 3 people.
Oh, yes.
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this evening.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. See you soon.
Good night.
Yes,
see you soon.
We can keep on talking about all these different ideas for making things more creative and teaching the faith in action and having new ideas and maybe bringing art into it. So we can continue the conversation.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
I can help wherever I can. If you need to design, I'm always here.
Yes.
Okay, bye everybody. See you soon.
Bye.
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 Okay, Pete, you and I have many things to talk about. So we'll connect on email, okay?
Sorry, we connect.
We'll connect on email. You have a lot of things that you shared today that were very
I've already sent a few.
Bye, Munir. Munir, take care.
Munir, go to bed. Go to bed. Don't go to any rooms.
Yeah, I'm not going. But what time started?
Oh, hold on.
Yeah, because in India, you told me is 8 p.m. London time, but check.
Okay, hold on.
London.
But for me, 1 hour back.
Okay,
I
hold on.
just came 1 hour back.
8 p.m.
But you said 2 hours.
Are you in New Delhi? New Delhi.
Yeah.
Okay, so 8 p.m. New Delhi time is 12:30 a.m. So
I thought 1:30. So I came 1 hour. I wasted 1 hour.
Oh, right now it's almost 3 in the morning, right? Right now it's 2 a.m.?
2:43 a.m.
Right, okay. So then tomorrow night, if you plan on coming, my talk is at 12:30 a.m.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was...
You know what, Munir? You make a good point. I think next time if we do another talk, I will put all the major time zones. I'll put GMT, I'll put New Delhi, I'll put Istanbul, so that when people look at the information, they can see their time. Because another person made a comment in the comments also. They said, oh, I'm here too late. I joined at the wrong time, etc. So next time I'll put, because I have to be, it's sort of inclusive of all the people that live in different time zones. Some people are in Australia, some people are in India, some people are in America. And not everybody, so PST is confusing, you're right. I'll do it better next time.